Welcome to another Cutting Edge Show. I'm Omar Neal, the former mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama, host of the You Got the Power radio talk show, but more importantly, one of the co hosts of the Cutting Edge Show right here. And we are brought to you in part by the School of Public Health at the University of Maryland. Also, don't forget that we are doing things differently here. We focus on all things health and wellness, COVID-19 and beyond. One of the things that we are interested in knowing is this: how much do you know about affirmative action? What are you what are your thoughts about diverse environments for growth and development? Well, but we're going to have a really, really good show today. This is the Cutting Edge, where we discuss all things health and wellness. Well, today we'll be talking about affirmative action, the benefits of diversity, understanding what affirmative action is, really doing a deep dive into the Supreme Court decision that basically gutted affirmative action. We'll be talking with Attorney Crystal James, who is the Vice President of Internal Affairs and General Counsel at Tuskegee University. We also will be talking with Royce Kennebrew, who is the president of the Kennebrew Group. He has a new book out. You'll see it, The Ghetto Grave Dodger, but he focused on primarily issues concerning emotional intelligence. But we're going to bring all of that into this space and have a conversation about affirmative action on this segment of the Cutting Edge. Well, you see me here, but I don't do this by myself. I got this dude that I hang out with each and every Cutting Edge show. His name is Dr. Stephen B. Thomas. He's a professor at the University of Maryland School of Public Health and director of the Maryland Center for Health Equity. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my brother from another mother, my dear, dear, dear friend, my colleague, my co-host, Dr. Stephen B. Thomas. We call him Dr. T. Hey, Dr. T, how you doing?
Hey, Mayor, it's always good to be in the same space with you. And right here on the Cutting Edge, can you believe what's going on in the world today? Not only do we see these spikes in the pandemic, but it's like the progress that we've made, the lessons we learned in the pandemic, folk running back to their corners. But look what's happening more broadly with us as Black people and people of color in this country when it comes to affirmative action.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's going to be really huge, because I think a lot of times when you look at the gains that we made that we thought were permanent, right? When something is codified in law and through the Supreme Court, and and stare decisis, it's supposed to be settled law. And we go back and we say, okay, we got this. Okay, now we can work on other things. And then you find out later on that what you thought you had, you no longer have. So we have to start over again and understand how can we make these provisions for fairness and equity more permanent in this country. That's the work we got to do. But Dr. T, we don't do this by ourselves. We got this team behind the scene. We call them our Cutting Edge team, headed up by Meg Jordan, our technical director, Saraya Khan, social media coordinator, and Elijah Pugh Jr., our sound designer.
I see you still bouncing to the music.
Oh, man, I love that music, man. It has that groove, Dr. T, just has that groove. Well, that you can catch us on all social media platforms, Facebook or YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and others. You can make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this program with your network, because we want to grow exponentially. We also do a newsletter that comes out every week. You can subscribe to the newsletter by just using that QR code, and it will allow you to subscribe, and you can get the newsletter each and every week. The newsletter also archive our shows. So if you miss the show, The link to the show will be in the newsletter, along with other really pertinent information that's very useful concerning health, wellness, and beyond.
And
COVID-19
Mayor,
and beyond. Yeah.
you got that right. And over the years, can you believe I'm talking about years that we've been doing this show? We have done some public health minutes that are directly related to the comments and the needs coming from our audience, and they are absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely. Dr. T, this make December, I think 3 years. Was that 3? Is that 3 years, something like that?
Well, whatever it is, I stopped shaving when it started.
Well, so 6 years then.
But it wasn't all white when it started.
But Dr. T, you mentioned this, and we're just going to do it because I really want to get into the show. But COVID is back, and a lot of people don't know that, and so we need to make sure that we emphasize this. That's our work, is to make people aware of the dangers that lurk, and when things change, then we have to change, and so that's something that we need to work on as well. And with Attorney James here, who that's her bailiwick. In dealing with that, she coordinated that for Tuskegee University and for Tuskegee and Macon County as well. So we may even talk about that as well, Dr. T. Go ahead.
Let me just say this, as it gets back in the news and we see the spikes, we got people coming into places that they trust, our barbershops and salons, our warriors, to get information. And so we really have safe harbors out there, trusted information centers right now for people to know how to help their community.
Yeah. Dr. T, you ready to jump on this subject? I mean, just with 2 feet. I mean, are you ready to just do a deep dive into affirmative action and the benefits of a diverse environment?
Let me just give you my bias starting out.
Okay.
I'm proud to be an affirmative action baby.
Yeah.
I'm proud to have walked through the doors that were made possible by the people right out of Tuskegee and around the country, and even right here in Maryland, that made all of it possible. And those gains came at people's suffering. I don't want to forget that. Sounds like this is the time to remind ourselves the sacrifice that got us this far.
Yeah, I don't disagree, man. We're going to really do a deep dive. Let's bring up our first guest. Now, she's backed by popular demand. I'm talking about Attorney Crystal James. She is one of the top leaders in Tuskegee at Tuskegee University. She's an educator, she's an attorney, she's a leader, but more importantly, she's a servant. Anytime you need Attorney James to do something for the people, for the community, she always avails herself to that. She has such a wonderful spirit and just a breadth of knowledge about multiple issues. So she's a great resource and a special resource and a partner to the Cutting Edge. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our dear friend, back by popular demand, Attorney Crystal James. Hey, Attorney James, how you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me back.
And
for the warm welcome I always get when I come here and engage on the show. It's always a pleasure to speak with you and Dr. T, as well as with our friends and neighbors in the shops who gives us the insight and the information and the questions from the street.
Absolutely. That's what this is about. Go ahead.
Attorney James, we're at the start of the school year. The students are coming back. And I'm thinking of the challenges that we face today, both, from the environment to COVID, but how important it is to have multiple disciplines working together. And we saw a little bit of that during the height of the pandemic because we moved the needle. But I'm looking at your bio, and you highlighted in there the fact that it's both scientific and policy. How is that important now, the science and the policy together? You don't always see that.
Well, when it works well, Dr. T, the science will inform policy.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
That's how it's designed to work. We know sometimes in our country, it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog. We get policy, and then we try to find science to prove that we were right.
Right.
But when it works well, we let the evidence actually develop the policies and how we should move, not necessarily who benefits more economically or who favors a particular topic, but actually looking at empirical data that actually includes everyone. Because you can have data, but if you don't ask the right people the right questions, is that good data? And is that really informing you? And will it actually benefit the masses? Or is it just, again, a selected group that is going to give you the answer that you're looking for? And also how you design the question. So all those are things we teach our students in public health. How to design a good question, how to make sure you're getting the right data from the right sources, and then also to have a hermeneutic of suspicion. Be suspicious of even your own collection. And be open to criticism, as well as invite people from other disciplines into that conversation so they can show you your blind spots. You can't see your own blind spots. You need someone else to show you what you might be missing. And that may be somebody. And what I found the most is right here in Macon County, I can take it to our health committee or to our community task force, and they would tell me, absolutely, you're so wrong. That is not how that's going to work if you come in our community. So no, ma'am, try again. And I'm very thankful for that.
Well, we saw science itself come under attack, and to know that it can work in the courtroom, given that many of the gains that we have in the name of affirmative action happen in a courtroom, to know that science can work there for justice. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. When it is a space where science become increasingly important, everything from the forensic evidence that we see on a lot of the shows now that's in vogue to have, and I'll admit I am a forensic files junkie. I think that's what I'm being another life. But even those things can be contaminated, right? So again, you got to still have the hermeneutic of suspicion and make sure that you are looking at not just the data, but the collector.
There you go.
Collectors of the data to and ask the critical questions. But even down to the process in which we have experts come and give testimony, money and power buys the answer that you want, right?
Okay.
So again, being able to investigate and interrogate that in a way that actually gets to the truth. So while science in its purest form can inform, I think, all areas and all facets of our life, we also have to continue to have that lens of suspicion and not only interrogate others, but interrogate ourselves to make sure that our motives and our intention did not color the findings that we're now trying to present as truth.
Wow.
All right. Well, that's powerful. We wanted to get into that. And then we're going to get into the subject shortly, because that was very important. That's something that we need to do almost every show, Dr. T.
Yes.
We need to go back to COVID,
at
least and talk about it in some context, right?
Silver lining.
Because it has something to do with it. Let's bring up our next guest. This brother really needs no introduction on the cutting edge. He's one of our own as well. His name is Russ Kennebrew. He is an author and educator, and of course he focused on human capital development to really get people to understand how emotional intelligence informs one's ability to coexist in a healthy way. And he believes that if you can strengthen and get people to understand how to manage their emotions early, then less conflict take place. People are more apt to be in healthy environments by which they can grow and have their being in a safe space. And so, given all of what we see happening, both locally, statewide, and nationally, all over this country, we recognize the need for emotional intelligence. His last book, The Ghetto Grave Dodger, is really taking steam. he has now put a workbook to accompany the book so that it becomes a practical instrument to begin to really work out those principles that he enumerate in the book. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming a brother from another mother, my friend, my partner. I'm talking about Royce Kenny, bro. Royce,
snap him up, snap him up, snap him up.
What's happening, baby? What's happening?
Thank you so much, gentlemen and Attorney James, for having me on this show tonight. I'm really excited to talk about the topic of affirmative action. One of the things that I do concurrently with my work in K-12 education is working in diversity, equity, and inclusion space for a federal agency. And I've been doing that for 19 years in areas of social and what they call special emphasis programming. And it's programming that was designed to make sure that the work environment is better for and more conducive for effectiveness and efficiency in the workplace and federal agency. And I've done that, 20 or 30 different federal agencies. I'm happy to be excited for this discussion tonight.
Absolutely. Well, we are appreciative to have you. Let me see if we can kind of frame the issue. The whole notion, and I'm going to talk from my vantage point. The whole notion of affirmative action is to try to mitigate many of the discriminatory practices that held people of color primarily, but disenfranchised people and marginalized people back from institutions that they would normally be have access to if they were a different color, right? And because the government sanctioned those laws through laws, many people did not get access. And so it's just like a highway. You don't go into a highway from a stop sign. You have to have a merging ramp, an on-ramp that allows you to get gets up steam to merge into the lane and then go on. And what we believe that ramp was too short because we still do not have equity. Now, Attorney James, is that too simplistic?
No, I think that's a great analogy. I think what we historians have shown us, and even current sociology work shows the vestiges of slavery and Jim Crow still live in our communities, and also practices that are in not only in state and federal systems, but in privately owned systems. And we continue to face those. And it's not just for people of color, it's every otherism that you can think about. All the isms, people who don't look traditionally like we look. We see a lot now with Gen Zers, with other people who have different color hair, who have piercings in places that we don't necessarily agree with in certain generations. So I think that we have a lot of things that are generational that we use to other each other as well. And it is very much pervasive in our society. And it has the historical vestiges of slavery continue to allow people to feel like they have the right to other people and exclude them from whatever situations and advantages that they have power over.
It's interesting, Royce, that we have a situation where, and we talked about it earlier, where when you think that you have something that's been, codified or solidified in law, and then to only find that you've lost it again. And that, affirmative action is one. Shelby versus Holder decision. You were down in Shelby County when we were talking about the
Roe Wade.
Rolling back voters' rights, right, with the 15th Amendment and taking away the pre-clearance clause there. I mean, every time we seem like we get ahead, why is that? Can you tell me why?
I think one of the things that we need to be cognizant of is that there are groups of people that are threatened by demographic changes that are happening in our country, and that they sit and have strategy sessions about how it is to maintain power and to roll those things back. I can remember when President Obama was elected 2 times, and not many people know that the Democratic Party lost hundreds of seats in states across the United States, where many of the state houses then were led by the opposite party of the president. And so that meant that they were working against what he was working for, and was actively working to roll back these things, these voter suppression laws. And like they're waiting for certain things to happen in the Supreme Court, and then they strategize to say, okay, so how can we roll back these advancements? And that's what has happened really since the 1960s, looking for opportunity to roll back these advancements of African Americans, to keep power in the hands of a very few amount of people.
Now, Dr. Kennebrew, I mentioned that the advances we've made have come at the suffering of our people, including death. And they're trying to take that out of the history books. But my point is, how might we strategize to keep what now is being taken for granted?
Well, Dr. T, unfortunately, it seems like many times in our community, we are reactive, that we are in a defensive posture and not in an offensive posture. It seems like many of our organizations, we strategize in a defensive posture and not necessarily saying, okay, now what can we do next to make sure that we advance the cause? Some of us seem to believe that if we have a President Obama, and if you got a Beyonce, and if you got a Jay-Z, and if you got these advances in entertainment and education, and some in politics, that we have arrived to a post-racial America, where there's some folks that don't want a post-racial America. And wherever we want to take one step forward, they're willing to pull us 3 steps back. And so I think, Dr. T, that we need to, our organizations, our faith-based institutions, our K-12 organizations, our institutions of higher learning, we all have to start thinking about what's the next move that takes us to the next level, so that we are able to keep these rights and principles that align with the Constitution. Now, let me say this before I stop talking.
Okay.
It's not that we want something extra.
Right.
We're not saying give us something extra. We only want what it is that the documents of this country say that we ought to have. And there are people that want to roll those back and take those back from us.
Dr. Attorney James, let me ask this question. Because, we're talking about affirmative action. There was just a decision made that rolled back to, could you kind of encapsulate, can you kind of put that where the cows can get it, so we understand what that decision was? What were the arguments on both sides of that decision that led to what I consider a wrong decision on the Supreme Court's part?
Well, let me just start with this disclaimer. This opinion is 280 pages, if you include the dissent and concurring opinions. So I would do my best to try to summarize.
I mean, if it's anybody can put it in where the cows can get it. I mean, it's Attorney Crystal James. That's and you can
even how do they title it?
I mean, just let us know what the arguments are. I think I know what the arguments are, right? Right. But we got people are listening who may have no idea what happened, why it happened, and what the consequences are to it happening. That's what I want you to kind of help us understand.
Absolutely. And if I get too far down in the weeds, just bring me on back up.
I'll bring you back. Go ahead.
Up there. But this was a Supreme Court decision that we're talking about as the Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus the President and Fellows of Harvard College. And it was joined also with the University of North Carolina, two of the oldest institutions of higher learning in the United States, one private, Harvard, and one public, UNC, so that they covered the basis of what private and public institutions should do and should think about when they are considering race in their admissions practices. Now,
Attorney James, I may just ask a few questions along the
Sure.
way. I knew all those groups you mentioned except the very first organization.
Right. The very first organization is a group of Asian American students that students for and parents of future students.
Wow.
Who felt like the use of race was actually a disadvantage for them because they were not considered to be a disadvantaged race in this consideration. And that spots that were being given to African Americans, but for that, they would have been allowed to be admitted into these two old and storied institutions that are subject of the current opinion. Now, again, we know that once the Supreme Court makes a decision, this decision doesn't just apply to UNC and Yale, it applies to all public and private institutions in the United States. And so it is a far-reaching decision, and it does analyze whether or not the practices that were used by these institutions to actually create a more diverse student population violated the 14th Amendment as well as the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by using race in their admission process. And they targeted their undergraduate admission process specifically for this analysis. And it basically held or what they found is that UNC's consideration of an individual's race violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which applies to public and colleges and universities. And it also reaffirmed that Title VII requires all colleges and universities who receive any financial assistance, which encapsulates the privates, to comply with the same provisions of the Equal Protection Clause. And it was important that they brought it on this particular statute because, again, it reaches all universities now. And it also uses, by applying equal protection, it also dictates what level of scrutiny the Supreme Court must use when it evaluates those policies for those institutions.
Let me ask the question quickly. Did they consider the fact that all Black people aren't poor? All Black people did not experience the same discrimination in their life, and so therefore you cannot use Black because we're not monolithic. Was that part of the argument from their perspective?
Well, they use the argument, but not from the perspective that you're giving it. They're basically saying that we have had these systems in place to use race and to basically advantage people of color, especially Blacks in the United States, and that previous decisions talking about precedents or stare decisis that you alluded to in your opening has said that we could use this, but there had to be an endpoint. And the previous decision had said 25 years should be enough. That's the on-ramp that they gave us, Omar Neal.
Wow.
You got 25 years to catch up, and then we're going to shut you down. Well, this decision said, well, it hasn't been quite 25 years, but it's been 20, so it's close enough. Y'all should have just your life together now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think that it's no longer appropriate for race to be considered. And again, they use strict scrutiny, which is the highest level of review. It is the level of review that is almost insurmountable when you're looking at a policy, because you have to have a compelling state interest that is narrowly tailored to the process that you're using. And that is something that's...
It was a setup.
but Attorney James.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
Attorney James, I'm going to go back to I am just so impressed. I'm doing this for a reason that a group of students, not just any students, got all the way to the Supreme Court, and the result is a ripple effect for us all.
Well, Dr. T, we don't know if the students were just a proxy for somebody else to do it vicariously through them. So to just say
I'm
the
just
students
pulling back
did
the
it,
curtain.
yeah,
to
yeah.
say
Well, we
kind of
don't know what it is, but we do know. And I think a lot of times we don't realize that we were not always the greatest beneficiary of affirmative action.
Well, that's right.
As well. White women, right? Is that was correct, Royce? I
Absolutely.
mean, we're
Absolutely.
in that something? And so
Absolutely.
so there were other people who were not classified as minority in
Right.
terms of color, right? Were also beneficiary of affirmative action. And if you look at the current status, and even as it relates to admissions and enrollment into these institutions, they have been going down.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then you would not take away the apparatus that would be an incentive to get more people in.
Well, it's by design.
I mean, so that's what I'm saying. It is by design. And if we don't have these conversations, which they're talking about quantifying,
Yes,
right?
and science.
right? In science, then just look at it. I think there was a university in California, that once they took away affirmative action,
Right.
that enrollment. What was it, Attorney James?
No, I thought you were making reference to the Baki case in UC Davis.
That's right. That's what it was. Right.
Mhm.
And they saw a precipitous drop in enrollment after that took place. Right. So
Well, I think what you have
happened.
to understand that when you make these kind of decisions, there is, I believe, a corpus of people in the United States that do not want to attend an institution that will take that posture. And so what you do is now you have people who are making different choices. And I think that is going to be one of the positive impacts of this particular case, because institutions like Mother Tuskegee that I happen to serve,
You can say it loud. I mean,
is,
just say it
you know,
again.
we have been providing a world-class education to a diverse population of students since our inception.
There you go.
You know, our first principle has always set our standard on excellence, civility, respect, trust, and accountability. And those are things that all people can get behind, no matter what your race, nationality, your gender, your sexual preference, all those things, all those otherisms that people tend to separate themselves by. When people tend to want to go to places where they will be accepted no matter what their ism happens to be. And I think our institutions of higher education, we have a moment here to step into the spotlight and say, hey, you are very much welcome here. And we have proven programs like the only veterinary medical program in a school in an HBCU that has produced more than 75% of all Black veterinarians in this country.
All right.
That's ready and willing to educate you.
That's right.
And provide you with the opportunity to move forward in your profession. We have them at Morehouse School of Medicine, Meharry School of Medicine.
All right. We
have them out at Drew, across, no matter where in the country you like to go. There are institutions that are available and ready to accept you into their program.
You know, Attorney James, you are absolutely correct. Let's legacy admissions is still intact.
Now, what is that?
That is absolutely,
you know, and so that seems to be, you know, a contradiction, right, to what that particular Supreme Court decision is saying. And if they were going to do away with affirmative action, looked like it would have been more broad sweeping to take away any advantage other than this notion of content of your character,
right,
if you will. Russ, help me out with that.
Come on.
Well, historically, I'm glad you brought that up. So I want to shed a little light on this, because the idea of legacy only comes into in the admission process at the beginning of the 20th century.
What
occurred, what as they would say in the beauty supply places and the barbershops, what had happened is that the admissions of Jewish students to Ivy League schools had reached a level that some thought was uncomfortable. In the beginning of the 20th century, to the Harvards, to the Yales, to the Princetons, to the University of Penns. And so they put in the idea of legacy to give a benefit to those who had fathers and mothers and grandparents who had attended those universities, and to give a disadvantage to those who did not, because they weren't allowed to attend the universities. That's why legacy is such a disadvantage for people of color. If at any time during the history of your institution, you didn't allow women, or you didn't allow African American, or you didn't allow Native American, you have just then given a benefit to those who have, because they have the ability to receive legacy points on their admission, and you don't.
Wow. I did not know that history.
Yeah.
On the origins.
And
the anti-Semitism behind it.
Yeah. Dr. T, when we really unpack this, which is what we're doing today, right? We'll understand that this is steeped in racism, right? And if you don't understand racism, then anything else you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. That's why it's important that we have these very, very candid conversations. Now, a couple of things I want to do. I want to do this early. I want to do a post with the word cloud, and so we can get that out of the way. Give Meg a chance to do this. Dr. T, tee it up.
I've always done this thing at this moment in the pandemic, and my only modification is it's no longer a worldwide emergency. But guess what? It's ticking up. And whatever this new normal is, what word best describes how you're feeling right now? Now think of that word and then put as many words as possible in the chat, and we're going to build a word cloud. And those out there in social media land, just use the Q&A box. And for the next 60 seconds, we're going to build a cloud. The more people who say a word, the bigger the word will be. And let's get a pulse beat on where people are today.
Don't worry about spelling. We got you.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, we got whatever you say. We can interpret it. We got a master interpreter.
Mary, what's striking me about this conversation that I didn't really fully connect is that by removing the history from the books of our youth, these touch points, these inflection points, here's how we became a more perfect union points, are no longer carried forward in our collective memory.
Right.
That's not good.
Right. Well, let me suggest, and I don't like to differ with you too much, but we are not a perfect union.
He thinks I'm too optimistic.
You have. I told you, Dr. T, don't get the illusion of inclusion. This is not a perfect. We are perfecting. Right.
There we go.
Right. So it is a process. Right.
Right.
But one of the challenges is as we move towards a more inclusive society, there are people who have power, are using the power of the people to roll back and to disadvantage certain groups of people. We still have that to take place. That's why voting is so very important. And we know that next year is the presidential election. We're going to be selecting the president and Congress and all of that. But we are also selecting school board members.
There you go.
Right. And what we got to do is be more intentional about making sure that everybody vote. Right. That's one of the challenges we have. Let me go to Attorney James. Attorney James, what we're talking about now is people who have decided that they are going to create a system that favors certain people without saying you favor certain people. If I'm already in, then you don't have to do anything for me. I'm already there. But if I'm trying to get in from the outside, that's different. Let me tell you why I said that. I was Dr. T, the young lady, she was a physician that told us that she was studying for med, and she went to this restaurant, and she was late. Her group had come over to study, and it was late, and she went into this restaurant, and the restaurant was closing. And so she got in the restaurant, and then she looked at the door, and at the door it had a sign said open.
Yes.
Right.
From the inside.
From the inside. But what she didn't realize until later, because she saw a lot of people outside trying to get in, but unable to get in, on the outside, on the other side of that open sign was closed.
There you go.
Right. Right. So she was looking at them like something wrong with y'all because the sign I see say open. Right. There are a lot of people, particularly white people, who have they don't see the problem. We have an egalitarian society. What's wrong with y'all? Right. You don't judge a person by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. They love to pull that one out, right? Right. What I mean? So how do you get people who are privileged? Yes. Because white privilege is so systemic, it's so ingrained in the fabric of society. People don't even know they privileged. How do you get them to see? Help me, Attorney James.
You are quoting Dr. Kamara Jones, and she is a superhero.
Absolutely, that's who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's who I'm.
Show.
That's who I'm talking about, right?
And I love that story because it is a way to kind of really, as you say, make it plain about what systemic racism can do. Mm-hmm. And when you have access, sometimes people with access don't understand why it is you don't just come in the door. Mm-hmm. The door is there. Why I walked in the door? Why can't you just walk in the door? Why is it I got to do something to help you? And you don't understand all the different flashing signs that they see that says you're not welcome. We're closed. This is not for you, and we don't want you here. And how they get disenfranchised by all that messaging. And we see it reflected in the anti-woke movement, who are trying to basically gaslight us about history. Wow. And what we have to understand is that we have to continue to take responsibility for making sure that we educate people about the experience of the other individuals that are on the outside of that door and seeing the closed sign.
Yeah. Okay. Rush, this notion that we can take education out or history out of education now makes sense to me. Because if I can take the history out, then you cannot contextualize.
Right.
Right.
Connect the dots.
You can't connect the dots. And so now I see why they have to do that. Because you see why that has to happen. So all of this is a part of a gaslighting or revisionist history, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. In order to justify their continuation of discrimination. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I think a way that we can look at it is that there are really two things. There are two types of people. There are those that are consciously, actively afraid of the demographic changes that are going to make African American, Latinx, Asian people, people of color, the majority, and then that consciously work against it. And then there are people that are talked about in a book written by some Harvard professors called Blind Spot, The Hidden Biases of Good People. And there are people that do not know that what they are doing is racist. I'll give you an example. There was, and this is in a little bit in Attorney James' wheelhouse, there was two briefs that were with, it was one brief, but it was given the name of a traditional white sounding name, and a traditional Black sounding name. And then it was given to C-suite attorneys to critique the brief. And the Black sounding name was critiqued worse than the white sounding name, even though it was the same brief.
Wow.
Okay. And then you could see those type of things in healthcare, whether it be African-American women dying at 3 times the rate in childbirth than white women, or African-American men and women having parts of their body, whether in cancer or because of diabetes, amputated at a higher rate than white people, or the University of Virginia Medical School students being polled and saying, and they said this, I think it was 4 years ago, that they gave less pain medicine to African Americans because we believe they have a different physiology than everybody else.
Right. And the number of hysterectomies that are done to Black women versus other people. So let me move into this, Attorney James. The implicit bias that's inherent in any institution because we're dealing with people, was that taken into consideration in this decision?
Well, it was discussed, and I can tell you our newest Supreme Court Justice, Justice Jackson, eloquently discussed the historical context in which that belies the majority's opinions assertion that we no longer have these ills in our communities, and that we no longer have a society that actually behaves in a manner that requires us to have the diversity as a forward issue as we're looking at education. And she says it so eloquently as she talks about there is a Gulf-sized race-based gap exists between the respect of health, wealth, and well-being of American citizens. And you don't have to go far back in history in order to give examples. And she walks through all of the cases that have talked about these things and illustrate these things. But she also points out how even in sociological studies and other ways, it continues to play out in every aspect of life, either implicitly, which is, as you mentioned before, people just don't understand that what they're doing is actually discriminatory. But then after the Trump era, we have the more explicit and self-righteous indignation type of discrimination, where they feel like we have a right and you do not have a right in order to even be here. And therefore, we're going to assert our right to keep you out. And we have to continue to look for and support ways that we can not only address our children, but that they are prepared to address our grandchildren, because the real purpose of them trying to take the history out of our education is not because for our current generation, it's because it is hard for you to convince your child that their Black friend is less than and worse than them when they have their experience is different. When the society in the way that they play together in basketball and other things as small children, it's hard for you to actually ingrain that same level of racism when they can read about people like a Barack Obama, a Michelle Obama, about a Justice Sotomayor, a Justice Jackson, and they can see these people and hold them up and say, these people clearly are much smarter than you, mom, dad. So how can you say that they're implicitly ignorant?
Inferior. Right.
So Attorney James, it's about the Supreme Court, the document you're talking about, and what happened, even on the losing side. And I don't know if the analogy is correct, win and lose, but it gets played out that way in the news for the general public. You're describing, is there a silver lining in the justice's dissent? I hope I'm using the right term. That is a lesson for us now. That is a roadmap forward. Are there things in there that you said, this is, it's a 200-page, but this is the required reading? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Dissenting dissenting opinions of today become the majority opinions of tomorrow.
Okay.
And you've seen this
All right.
happen.
Could you say
time
that
and time
again?
Yeah, do it again. That's a t-shirt.
That's one that's one of those ones that that you have to stop and you have to digest that. Would you please say that again, Attorney James?
The dissenting opinion of today becomes the majority opinion of tomorrow.
Wow.
Okay.
And it is important, and that is why Justice Sotomayor and Justice Jackson took the length of time that they did to go through and clearly explain why they disagreed with the majority opinion and how it actually diverts from clear precedent of racism, and clear examples of how the federal government itself has supported these implicit biases and overt racism against specifically Black people and all people of color throughout policies that have been legacy not so long ago in our lifetime, that just ended in the late 70s and some even in the 80s, that have continued and persisted in the way our own government treat individuals in America. These dissenting opinions use the analysis, and they go in and they actually point out for history and for tomorrow a better analysis and a way forward. Wow. And it also, in the silver lining that you talk about, what we have to do in this interim, because the pendulum swings to the left, and then it generally swings back to the right. It never rarely sits just in the center. We're always in some swing in motion when it comes to our opinions that come out of our court. And many times it don't necessarily reflect society. It's society's opinions. It reflects the overwhelming values of our society. Yes. And that's something that we have to actually investigate about what we are valuing as our core values as a nation. But it also helps us as we look at this. There are organizations that have put out some frequently asked questions and also some potential solutions. We have to now have our students, as they're applying to these institutions, it did not prohibit you from talking about how your experience as a first generation college student makes you unique and different and will bring value to a classroom. It did not prohibit universities and colleges from targeting people who are Pell Grant eligible, who come from certain regions in the country, from certain counties that may have been historically held back or are majority of one particular race or the other. You just can't use race only, but there are a lot of other things. The fact that you are a concert violinist and you're the first one to ever be that in your family, it's also, those are differentiators that you're now going to have to use to set our students apart.
Okay. Yeah. Let me ask this, Dr. Ritter, I'm teeing you up, so get ready to come up momentarily. I want to ask Royce Kennebrew, you can bring Dr. Ritter up while I and I'm going to introduce her, but I want to ask you this because we're talking about affirmative action and not having affirmative action, but we don't talk about the benefits of diversity, of having people with different experiences in a space that we can learn from each other. I say oftentimes that we all are possessors of some truth, and as we bring our truths together, then and only then do we get closer to the truth. Can you kind of tell us what you perceive as the benefit of a diverse environment, particularly in a classroom setting?
Well, before I talk about what I think, let's talk about some research.
Okay.
And here's what some research says.
Okay.
Some research says,
go to research. I'm going
to research first, and then I'll give you the anecdotal statement in a minute. But in regards to what the research says, it says that when an organization reaches around 30% inclusion of people of color, and that they are represented in the C-suite, in middle management, and in entry-level jobs, that organization becomes more efficient, thusly more profitable. Wow. It is research that shows that diversity, equity, and inclusion at around a 30% rate at whether it be a school, whether it be a for-profit agency or nonprofit, that organization becomes more efficient. Now, as a K-12 educator and trainer and all that good stuff, I know, and we know that the wider the breadth of experiences of the people that are in the learning environment, the more wealthy, the more healthy, the more, I guess it could be more rich the discussion is in those educational experiences. And so, when I was a classroom teacher, they would, if I was in Florida, I'd be in jail right now because
you have on stripes or green orange jumpsuit now by now.
because what I would do, I would do this. What I would do is I would look through the social studies curriculum.
Yes.
And when the social studies curriculum did not talk about people of color, I would find the people of color that were making contributions and women that were making contributions in our country, in our state, and in the world during that time period. And people were like, what? Who's Robert Smalls? What? Who's the Crispus Attucks? What? We never heard of these people, right? And so that's what the problem is. This the problem. I believe in my heart. This is anecdotal. I believe in my heart that most people are good people.
Yeah.
And if you see somebody starving, you're gonna send some money. If somebody got burned out of their house, you're gonna help them here. If there's a flood here, we're gonna send this. And I believe that when George Floyd happened,
yes,
and Black people and white people and gay people and Muslim people and Baptists and all of these people came together, that it terrified a political party that was used to using division and derision as a political advantage to keep power.
They saw it coming together.
And so when that happened, then you notice that it wasn't after that summer happened, that next fall, here comes the discussion of critical race theory to divide us once again.
Which has been so mischaracterized by the people who try to use it as a weapon.
But it's been working.
Yeah.
And we need countermeasures.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm thinking and hoping that some of our countermeasures can be effective in a different space.
Yeah.
Like the pandemic demonstrated, that was another time we came together across a whole lot of different lines and boxes to save lives. And I think there could be more progress made there. And this is why the dissent is so important as a roadmap forward.
Yeah. Dr. Carol Ritter, she's our resident gynecologist. She has been with us for years now. She's a part of this cutting edge show, an integral part. We love Dr. Ritter so much. She gives perspective because, not only is she Caucasian or white, but she is a person who deals with people, just as the barbers and the stylists. She has a business as well. So she interacts with people of diverse backgrounds. So, this notion of zero-sum game, Dr. Ritter, it's always puzzled me that somehow if I gain, then somehow other people feel like they lose. Why can't we come to this win-win perspective? Can is that possible in your perspective?
What kind of a game would that be? Do you have to have a winner and a loser in every game?
Wow, that's right. That's interesting, Dr. Ritter. Isn't that something?
Well, I'm actually a product of affirmative action too, because when I went to interviewed for medical school, the interviewee, the doctor, actually asked me what I thought about the Bakke case. It was going on at the time. Okay. I never thought of myself as a minority. Women are 51% of the world. Holy crap. So I was definitely, I wouldn't be here if it wouldn't be for affirmative action. And then when I got into medicine, you could see the science is delayed by decades before it gets to the people. It's probably the same way with policy, right? Science affects policy. It's decades before it actually gets to the people. And so I saw, the imbalance in my field of gynecology and fight with it all the time. We don't have the data though, because the data that pharma uses is the reference white male. So women's medicines were delayed. And then when you do get medicines like birth control pills, they don't pay for them. They don't put them over the counter, which they just recently did. First time, the last developed country to put birth control over the counter. And they pay for Viagra, but they don't pay for birth control pills. So, this has been a constant fight of equity.
I
for
knew
me,
you
for
would
women.
go there. I knew you would go. Then she go skate right by. They pay for this, but then she keep going. I saw you when you pulled up. You didn't have to blow.
Bring it up.
Go ahead, Dr. Ritter. Go ahead.
This is otherisms. I love that phrase, attorney general, is because attorney general. I elevate you. Basically, you're others until you're included, and then you're no longer an other. So this is basically the end game that I'm looking at is eliminating otherisms and inclusions, and everybody will win in that. And we include all of our data, because the barbers and the stylists data need to be in healthcare. It's not in the hospital. They're getting it out of the hospital. They need to go into the community and collect the data for our drugs and our research, our science, everything. So we're collecting it here through the pandemic, with all of these recordings and AI. So I have hope that our otherisms will lessen when we include these conversations from the chair. And I've been including them from the stirrups.
Right. Now, you're with MedChi. Make sure that people know what MedChi is, because that's a resource that we use to bring in the medical industry into these conversations. So tell them a little bit about MedChi.
MedChi is a medical society. It's a political advocacy organization. So it keeps track of the legislation in the state of Maryland. Every state has a state medical society, and some of them are more active than others in the policies. Our state now, from my point of view, we're a sanctuary state in Maryland. MedChi never really wanted to talk about abortion before, but they have to now, because the other states around us, they are in trouble when it comes to women's rights. So we have to change. MedChi's changing its policies now. MedChi is, a product of medical racism too. They contributed to it. Henrietta Lacks was here in Maryland when the doctor that took the cells from her was a member of MedChi. Right. So it's a lot of progress that they made, but they work for, in the legislature in Annapolis, help us stay on track.
Yeah. But let me also add that, the pandemic broke down some walls and allowed us to build some relationships in ways that we're still nurturing, working with MedChi to bring medical expertise into the barbershops and salons, and giving them an opportunity to build their cultural competence skills, recognizing the wisdom in the community. And maybe we do that, again, lesson from the pandemic, in a hyper-local way, neighborhood by neighborhood. That's the part that gives me hope, Mayor.
Yeah, absolutely. Wellness Warriors, I'm going to be bringing you up. So if you are interested and want to be a part of the conversation, make sure you put your cameras on. Thank you so much, Dr. Ritter. Dr. Ritter, she just knocked it out the park. Dr. Ritter said, what game is it where you don't have a winner and a loser? And then I guess the question is why we got to have a game. You know what I mean? Why does this whole coexistence have to be competition in some kind of way? So that's another conversation. Let's bring up the word cloud and see how we're feeling. And then I'm going to bring in the warriors and have this conversation confused. Because, sir,
I thought we were going forward. Now
you know, we Dr. T, we done started some confusement. You know, hopeful, outreach,
right.
inclusive, tired, inspired, educated, opportunity informed, pissed,
Yes.
process, and I think all of those are speak to where we all find ourselves. The point of the matter, thank you, Meg. The point of the matter is when we are looking at constantly going back to the same things that we thought we had gained. It's like Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Right.
When do you ever really accomplish anything? When every time we are having things reversed, every generation. I think, Attorney James said when she said that the day's opinions is a day's a decision or something is tomorrow's dissents, tomorrow's a majority opinions or something.
That's right.
Right. I mean,
roadmap.
It gives a roadmap, but we have to continue to contextualize and bring truth.
Yes.
But you don't have to curse the darkness. The only thing you have to do is shine the light, because light and darkness cannot occupy the same space at the same time.
All right, you want to bring in the physics now.
That's right. All right. So let's bring in our wellness warriors. I'm gonna go first to Sandra Jenkins. Sandra hails from Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania. I know she's in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia somewhere. But she is one of just a member of the Cutting Edge family. She's been with us for years. Her smile just lights up the world. We love Sandra Jenkins so very, very much. Your thoughts about our conversation. I'm not going to even ask you a question. I'm just going to let you wax eloquently, whatever your thoughts are.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. This conversation is very, extremely profound to me, because in this industry, implicit bias, rears its ugly head when we start judging people by the texture of their hair and the color of their skin.
Yeah.
And I just want to share with you one of the volunteer responsibilities that I would say that I make for myself. I work 1 day a week at a senior living facility, and it's a very prominent senior living facility in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. And it's very interesting because of the fact that as an African-American woman that's working in a facility that is predominantly white, it's quite interesting when you're dealing with these issues of implicit bias. My skills goes beyond just, I would say, standing behind the chair. I made it very important to myself to take it that extra yard, so I can fight against the issues of racism or either discrimination. And so when I foster those skills within into my work, it's very interesting when I see residents and clients, reaching out and saying, well, I would like for you to do my hair because of the fact that I know you can go beyond just the styling. You can treat my scalp and you can treat my hair. And that's, generally what this industry needs. This industry needs stylists that are engaged in the importance of hair care. This is what the industry really needs to really actually grow out of some of these implicit biases, because I believe that people, really want, quality work. They want people to be able to perform, their responsibilities and their job, and the outcomes are very important, because I really find that with this whole COVID-19, issue that is just sort of woven into what we do and how we need to marry this whole importance of COVID-19 into our practices, I think it opens up our opportunities to really break down those barriers.
Sandra Jenkins, as I'm hearing you talk about being an African-American stylist serving a predominantly white client population in this facility, would you say that you have found it's such an intimate thing to work on somebody's head, okay? That you actually encountered people that had never had a Black person in that intimate setting?
Yes, I
That
have.
you were the first time, and you felt that broke down some of this racism?
Absolutely. Because of the fact that I really thank the Lord, I thank God for giving me the gift to know how to cut hair.
Wow.
And really having that skill down pat is just so remarkable. That is what I really find, that when I have someone sit in my chair that is another race than I am,
okay,
very uncertain about what kind of outcome they're going to have and what connection, what relationship they're going to develop with that person. I can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow.
And it's such an enlightening feeling to know that you can see that. That individual that sits in my chair,
yes,
really understand them and really touch their human side is really important. And I really find that really breaking down those barriers and really getting into the souls of people and really fostering good relationship, good skills, good practices, and also using your flair of really knowing what the latest, styles and techniques, all those type of things are so really good in this industry.
Sandra Jenkins got swag, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I in a nutshell, regardless of where people come from, together we can create a more inclusive and vibrant industry for everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
You mentioned something, because that's important. We if we can start seeing each other's heart, right, and not just the color of their skin, I think we can break down some of these barriers, but we got a long ways to go. Thank you, Sandra Jenkins, for always bringing it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's go to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We can't go to just any place in Arkansas. It has to be Pine Bluff,
right?
Arkansas,
Get it right.
Right. You got to get it right. Hey, Dorothy Reynolds, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you tonight?
Doing wonderful, supersonic. We get into these deep conversations and bring these attorneys and doctors and all these people. But what's happening in the chair, in the neighborhood, in the hood? What y'all talking about? That's what I want to know.
Well, that barrier of good hair, that need to be done away with, because all hair, if you have it, is good hair.
Well, what about if you don't have it? What's wrong with us?
You got a good scalp. Hey, Miss Reynolds.
You got others.
Like if you have it and then look it up.
I got some eyebrows.
Got three bald-headed men on here talking about if you have it.
Now, some of that is selective, because when I first met you all, you had hair.
Yeah, that's COVID-19 and worrying.
There you go. But Miss Dorothy, Arkansas is a place where one of those inflection points happen.
Yes.
There's rich history there.
Yes.
And here we are talking. And so you're down there in that part of the country where we're seeing, are you seeing the rollback? Are people talking about this rollback? Or are we still taking it for granted that we've arrived?
Wow, that's deep, Doc.
That is deep. I think that it's being taken for granted that we've arrived. As you know, we're dealing with the education system heavily right now in Arkansas. And that it's at a point where we need to wake up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. They really trying to take history like Florida, you
Yes.
know, out of the school system, Dr. Kennebrew. You know,
Listen,
it's huge there and political, and it's a political thing.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the female Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
Right.
Definitely. Most
and-
definitely.
The governor of Arkansas.
That's right.
Yes.
And Attorney James, I want you to know that part of your message is we need to be at those school board meetings.
Absolutely.
And I want you to know that Ms.
And
Dorothy has been out there at those meetings.
Yes. And be vocal if you need to be.
Absolutely. As I said, don't just show up.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
got to also speak up and
Right.
let them
You
know
gotta-
that not everybody's going along.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Once you know, then you you know, I mean,
You
So
got
you
a
should-
tip? You got a tip for us, Dorothy?
Pardon?
You have a tip for your audience when you show
Well,
up to those meetings?
a tip,
Yes.
be informed.
Okay.
Be
Right.
informed.
right.
Come with
Don't-
your data.
Very good.
Don't go on what you heard, know for yourself.
All right.
That's profound.
There we
Dorothy
go.
Reynolds, Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Get it right.
Wonderful seeing you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
I'm gonna bring up Andre Russell, Dynamite. You on tap. Let's go to the ATL and let's go into the busiest airport in the United States world kingdom.
With a barbershop.
with a
With
barbershop.
the barbershop.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, bro, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Never forget about the barbershop.
There
Absolutely.
you
Yeah, but I'm listening to Kennebrew, and he's starting to remind me. You know, I've been around for quite some time,
go. All right.
and we are starting to get into different flavors. Like I don't know if any of you guys remember Huey Newton
Yes.
Mhm.
and things like that.
Absolutely.
What we're entering into from my perspective is we're running into the late 60s, early 70s type of mentality.
Uh-oh,
Look out.
We need the Black Panthers.
I love
with
Dr.
respect to
T. Go ahead.
with respect to the politics and what's happening amongst the Black people, and now we have people of other colors taking place of the Black people in America. So we're no longer predominant because they say, okay, well, now we're going to look at Asians, and now we're going to look at somebody else. And I'm thinking that pretty soon, as soon as we can organize a group thought, we're going to have another Martin Luther King or someone, let's just say, that's going to pick up the ball and say, we're getting kind of tired of this. Let's go ahead and make everything equal like it should be, and we can start moving forward. Because I really would love that, because I need to open up some more barbershops. So
You're an entrepreneur. I mean,
Exactly.
he's thinking economics, man. Y'all talking about race, man. I'm talking about green.
Yeah,
Y'all
I mean,
thinking white.
hey.
I'm talking about green.
Let's get some equity in this money.
because the only way I
That's
can
what I
help out another brother is if I have an extra couple dollars in my pocket and I'm going to strip it over there.
Yeah,
That's the best way to do it.
Say the best way to help poor people is not to be one of them.
There you go. Wait, I never would have thought of that, but
Love you, Andre Russell.
love you guys.
All right, Mike Dynamite Brown, all the way to DC. Man, what's happening, baby? How you doing?
Hey man, how you doing?
Good, man. Let me. I'm gonna flip the switch on you, right? Because I
Okay.
know you can handle this, right?
Okay.
Right before Dr. King's assassination, he was rethinking this notion of integration, right? He was saying that maybe I'm advocating to integrate my people into a burning house. He didn't know whether or not the notion of integration, which we've never had, let's say desegregation,
Yes.
was ever going to be accepted by the powers at be in this country. Is that far-fetched, or is that where we are now in 2023?
I think we're definitely still there. We've somewhat arrived, but not totally. And for me, when you guys were hitting on this topic, it really affects a lot of Black people, trying to get ahead because it's stitched in the fabric of America, the racism part. But for me personally, I get tired of the brothers coming in the barbershop, a certain particular type of brothers that come in the barbershop and blame everything on the white man. And they really haven't done anything to change, their trajectory in life or how they see themselves, how they're going to be in 5 years. When you look at it, they say it's all designed to keep them trapped in the hood with limited resources, little education, and only a few tap into it to be able to get financially free or educationally free with scholarship money from applying yourself in school, because they don't apply themselves in school to be better or become better. And then they say the white man do this and they do that. They really irritate me in the barbershop. Some certain ones. And I like to say, like, when you know better, you got to do better. And if you're not a part of if you're not a part of the solution, then you're a part of the problem. And I just think we need to put that mirror in a lot of people's face, and they need to do some really, really soul searching to dig in themselves to see if they're being the best version of themselves, so we can change this whole thing around. I think it's a whole thing of perspective that they saying that it's going to be racism, so I'm not even going to try. And I don't fall in with that line, because they're not even giving themselves a fair chance to see what you're going to do if you swing the punch. At least swing. You sitting down and taking it on the chin and saying it's the white man's fault. No, it's your fault. That's how I feel about it.
Let me say this. I want you to stay right where you are, Dynamite. I had an opportunity to interview Rosa Parks in the early 80s. I was doing a television show during that time.
Amazing.
And I asked Mrs. Parks, I said, why did you all boycott the buses? And I thought it was a rhetorical question. I thought it was to bankrupt the bus system, right, financially, to hurt them financially. I said, was it to hurt them financially? And she said, oh, no, that ain't why. And that really threw me off. I didn't know how to come back. So I asked her, I said, well, Ms. Parks, then why? And this is what she said, and I paraphrase, but this is what she said. She said, the first step in any liberation process is that the oppressed must first withdraw their participation from their own degradation.
Okay. All right.
She said, we can no longer blame white folk when we going on the bus, giving them our money, and then going to the back of the bus.
Yeah.
There's some things we have to withdraw from. We cannot contribute to our own degradation and blame everybody else. The first step of any liberation process is that the oppressed must first withdraw its participation from its own degradation. And so that's what you're saying, is that there's some work we have to do, but we also have to look at the systemic nature of racism. And it's not about individual achievement when it is rooted, ingrained, and inculcated in all people activity. It impacts you even if you are good, even if you do go to school. There are a lot of people got degrees that's unemployed, that particularly in DC, you got PhDs driving Ubers.
Hey, Dynamite.
So am I wrong to feel like that?
No, you're not wrong to feel like that. But in the same toast, I just told you that Rosa Parks agree with you.
Yeah.
So I gave you one of the best examples of somebody to agree with you. But at the same time, in addition to that, so I didn't want to negate what the truth that you said, right? Because you said a truth. But we do need to understand that there is systemic racism that works underground, that inhibits you from being the true and perfect manifestation of God's intent for you, right? Not because you're not a good person, not because you tried hard, it's because the system is designed for you to fail.
Can I get some research?
That's
Doc,
correct.
Doc,
Go ahead. Go
Go,
ahead.
go, 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 go.
ahead, Royce.
This not anecdotal. This is research.
Go ahead.
this is a research.
I just want to make sure that we know where your antidote is. And where we not on your antidote now, really.
No, you're not on my antidote.
Okay,
I saw this study in the last 3 days. They did a study, black guy, white guy, black guy with a criminal conviction, white guy with a criminal conviction. They found that a white guy with a criminal conviction can get a job callback interview faster than a white guy with a criminal conviction can get a job interview or callback before a black guy without a criminal conviction. Right. So what the brother's saying is true, and what you're saying, Omar, is true, because there are things and there are systems at work, but we still have to have the agency to say that we are going to work harder than the system that is oppressing us. Okay. It's there, but we ain't gonna.
And let me add to that: when you withdraw yourself from the system that is oppressing you, there are other places that you can go to get the same thing at a higher and better level. We have HBCUs and other minority serving institutions that are available and ready for you.
Right.
To get that education, if you really feel like that you're oppressed in any other system. So I agree with you too, brother, that there are ways to avail yourself if you feel like you're not going to have the adequate opportunity at a PWI. That's not an excuse not to do anything, because there are other avenues.
Right. Let me just say.
Go ahead.
Because one of the things that Dynamite Brown and the other barbers and stylists have demonstrated during the pandemic is that people came and sat in their chair who were hesitant about getting vaccinated. Mm-hmm. And some of them left hesitant, but vaccinated because of the conversation in the chair. So Dynamite, before you depart, when you got that brother in the chair, I hear the frustration, but you talk about the ongoing relationship. So do you just listen, or do you add something that might change the trajectory? How do you handle it?
Oh, absolutely. We especially when it's a relationship there, I can say some things that maybe you couldn't say to him.
Okay.
I'm like, man, well, what are you doing about it? Or are you just on the fence throwing rocks? Or are you gonna come get off the fence and get in the game?
Okay.
Because you're not doing nothing to make this situation better. You sitting there throwing rocks from the fence, talking about what the white man did. What are you trying to do to make it better?
Okay. All right. And they'll take it from you because the relationship.
The relationship. I can talk to him like that.
Well, that
he might tell me to go do something if I get too personal, but
but you also are an entrepreneur, so I'm sure there's a lie that you keep them people coming back, but the way you doing fade, can't nobody do it like that. So
you better have a skill.
Brother have to overlook you sometimes because I got to get my fade, brother.
Man, can you believe it's 8:27?
Yeah, we got to get ready to get up out of here. My thought is this: as we look at, the whole notion of trying to process, gains and losses, right? We need to understand that the civil rights movement is not a historical thing.
Okay.
That each generation has the responsibility to address the concerns of its time. And you're right. We have alternatives. I don't want to go somewhere where people don't want me.
There you go.
I really don't. When places and let me also say this, Dr. T. I was talking to Meg earlier, and they were talking about the efforts, the overt efforts of the University of Maryland to be inclusive.
That's right.
In areas, and that you're on those boards trying to do that. I want you to speak just a little bit about that, because I can talk about Tuskegee all day and we can dominate, but I do want to give our university that sponsors this program and all of that give him some love. So talk a little bit about the diversity and inclusion promotion from the University of Maryland. I'm gonna give you one 30 seconds to wax eloquently in that space.
Well, I'm looking at Attorney James' virtual background. We've talked about that before. lifting the veil of ignorance. Well, on our campus, there's a statue of our native son, Frederick Douglass, not as the elder gentleman, but as the young firebrand, okay? Hand out, modeled after Barack Obama, cape flying, all right? So there's something happening on our campus, there's something happening in our state. And I think that I'll do it like this, Mayor. The CDC came and did a site visit yesterday, and I was there. And the gentleman who was the interim chair of one of the major departments was a Black man, but he's also one of my former mentees.
Right. You got a Black president too up there, right?
Got a Black president. There's a new chair in our Department of Family Science, an African American. Okay, my point is, I am witnessing
Black governor.
Black governor, first South Asian lieutenant governor.
Hey, what's up?
So, and we're the flagship of the state. There are models that can help point that way forward, as Attorney James said. So we want you all to come see the Maryland model. And as we try to support all efforts to advance justice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, for that little commercial.
Yeah, thank you. Commercial break, that's how we did that.
We're gonna transform healthcare. I'll leave it like this. As you see these polls behind me, the whole notion is a new doorway to healthcare, a doorway that our people will come through, relax, knowing that when they leave, they're gonna feel better. Ain't that right? All the warriors out there, when they come in, they feel one way. And even if Dynamite Brown might be frustrated, that person getting out of that chair feels better. And they'll be back. That's what we want to have happen.
Well, I'm going to give you that last word. Attorney Crystal James, boy, do we love and appreciate you here on The Cutting Edge. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and you are always welcome to come here. You represent Tuskegee. You rep Tuskegee like nobody else, and we're so proud of you. Our dear friend, a brother from another mother,
there you go.
Royce Kennebrew, boy, do you bring it. Not only do you bring the statistics and the knowledge, you bring the anecdotes.
There you go.
So we appreciate both, man. The yin and the yang.
Yeah, right.
We appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And for all of our wellness warriors, thank you all so much for sticking in here with us and for taking this information and disseminating it in your hair salons and barbershops. As always, I'd like to leave you with these two words. Remember that I love you with a perfect love. But more importantly, remember, you got the power. Until the next Cutting Edge show, we'll see you. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself. You ought to.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.